So, have you ever wanted to make a difference? I mean, a real difference. Well, by the end of our time together, you're going to have that opportunity to literally bring hope and change to somebody's life. You know, Laura and I have been with Compassion International for 6 years now. And at $43 a month, we help feed and educate a child. As a matter of fact, we support two children, Ruggie and Josephat. And we enjoy doing this. It's been a thrill for us. And, you know, one of the things that Laura and I have always done is just sponsor children our whole lives at different organizations. But I want to invite you to experience the same joy and meaning in your own life today, because it brings that kind of meaning to ours. Now, you may have the resources to sponsor a child, or maybe you have resources to sponsor even more than one child. Maybe for you, it's too much, and you may want to partner with somebody else to do it together. But either way, this is an amazing opportunity through Compassion International. And what's great is through them, you're assigned a child and you have a relationship with that child where you personally meet these children's needs. And this leads me to one of the more difficult teachings of Jesus, of the separating of the sheep and the goats. And Matthew records this teaching in Matthew 25, where Jesus says that God is going to separate people into two different groups eventually. We read about it in verse 44. It says, "Then they will reply, 'Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and not help you?' And he will answer, 'I tell you the truth. When you refuse to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you are refusing to help me.'" You know, what do you mean, Jesus? Well, he would say, when you have an opportunity to show the love of Jesus and shut that down, it's a sign that you're not very connected with me. Now, at first blush, you know, this is a very disturbing teaching. It's one of those teachings that when you listen to this again or read this again on your own, it causes you to deeply wrestle with this. I mean, there's a lot maybe that we don't know from this short teaching of Jesus, but there are some things that we do know. One of those things is there will be a final judgment for all of us one day. Another thing we know is that some will be welcomed to heaven and others will be banished. And the third thing we know from this is how one treats the poor is going to play a role in some way. Now, this brings a lot of conflict in my soul, and it might be with yours as well, because God is ultimately very clear about true salvation, that we do not gain heaven from doing good things, that it is entirely by faith, and it's the work of Jesus and what he did on the cross and raising from the dead that we put our faith in. So earning your way to heaven is really a non-starter, because no matter how much good you do, you're still not perfect. I always think of Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, this letter that Paul writes to the church. He says, "God saved you by his grace when you believed." And you can't take credit for this. It's a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. So it's not about doing good works to earn our way to heaven. So what is the meaning of Jesus' teaching that Matthew records here? Well, Matthew 25 is a parable of Jesus told to make a specific point. And that point is this: how we treat the poor matters. And because it's one of the signals of true faith. It's that we will love what God loves and we will do what Jesus would do. And if you look throughout his biographies written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll see over and over that Jesus was often moved with compassion. Moved with compassion. When he saw that there was the mass of people out in front of him, he was moved with compassion because he said they were like sheep with no shepherd at all. And when he was with those who were hungry. You had a whole group of people who were starving and hungry. He was moved with compassion to feed them. When it came to healing some blind men, he saw them and he was moved with compassion at their plight, and he wanted to bring healing into their life. So all over and over, Jesus is moved to act by compassion. Now, what is compassion? Well, compassion means really to suffer with. It's really to empathize, to put yourself in other people's shoes. And these people entering heaven from the parable that Jesus was teaching were doing what true followers of Jesus would do, following the heart of God. Not to earn it to get to heaven, but as a result of their true transformation. So this teaching is not about scaring you into serving the poor. It's to state clearly that when it comes to following Jesus, it's normal to have a posture to help. Now, I'm not saying that everyone listening to this needs to go sponsor a child through Compassion International, but it is one way to help. And I am saying, as Jesus followers, that it's not okay to ignore the needs of the poor. I mean, guys, let's face it, life is really hard. It's very hectic. It's easy to get wrapped up in the here and now and the things that we can see and experience every day because feels like we're just always putting out fires. And life is full of real challenges that we face all the time. And many times what this causes, though, is it's kind of this whole out of sight, out of mind concept. But what we prioritize really matters. And so it's not always about the urgent, it's about what am I doing that's important. So sometimes I need to be personally challenged on this, and maybe you do too. And because part of loving God and others is really to be moved with compassion, to practice generosity rather than scarcity. It's understanding that those who have more are to help those who have very, very little. So another disciple of Jesus, John, who was a very close follower of Jesus, he said it this way: if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? It's a very convicting verse. Well, several years ago in 2018, I was invited to a trip to Haiti sponsored by Compassion International. And one of the things that I was able to do, which was a blessing, was go to this country in February, which, living in New England was a nice break from the cold winter. But beyond that, I really knew what I was getting into. I knew that this was a third world country. I knew that Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the whole Western Hemisphere. And I was really forced to wrestle with this. Do I want to really come face to face with seeing poverty this close? And I was challenged by it. Part of me wanted to stay home where it was comfortable, but I knew that it was the right thing to go. And when you think of Haiti, you think of a country that's in peril all of the time, it seems like. Never mind the corruption that they deal with and the instability, but even in 2010, the massive earthquake that killed many of their leaders, and it just left the country in disarray. And Haiti is still in the news these days with its instability and troubles. But what responsibility does a person like me have as a person who, by God's grace, lives here in New England to those who are destitute and many who have nothing, especially the most vulnerable, the children? What would our loving God require of me? What would he require of you? It reminds me of what James wrote in James 1:27, pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress. Then he says this, and refusing to let the world corrupt you. He puts those two together. And I think it's interesting that they would be tied in together because I think the world does corrupt our way of thinking, even when it comes to helping those around the world. One of the ways the world corrupts us is by just making us cynical because it just throws at us all these things all the time. And these thoughts come into our head where, oh, they're just trying to manipulate us. This has got to be overstated. This is what governments are for. Why don't they do it? Why don't they fix it? This is what billionaires are for. The Gates Foundation and other charities. They should be taking care of this. I'm just barely getting by. Or sometimes we even go, what about the kids right here, that are right amongst us, that are in peril, that are in trouble? To which I would answer with our church here, we do help the children in our own community as well. And we need to be careful that this isn't an either or type of situation for us, but rather a both and. The reality is that, the poverty here, which is real, and the poverty in Haiti, those are really two wildly different poverties, but they both need our help, but we can do both. And I could say, again, cynically, that Haiti's broken and no amount of aid can fix Haiti. But love doesn't allow me to do that. See, what I love is Compassion International works through the local church right on the ground right there. While I was there in 2018, I had the opportunity to travel to a couple of different churches. One of them was Urban Church located right in the capital of Port-au-Prince, and one of them was in a rural region as well. And I don't know if you know this about many of these churches, but many of them have schools. And the church schools literally make up 60% of the schools in Haiti. So this is quite different than America. So in other words, if you don't have a church on the ground, chances are you don't have a school. These children don't have a school to go to. So churches are vitally important, and Compassion International works through local churches to help educate and bring hope to these kids and their families. Now, back to Jesus' teaching here. The group that Jesus condemned, that he separated out, they weren't necessarily mean people. They weren't cruel people. They just did nothing. And so meeting the needs of the poor, really what we're learning should be something that is prioritized in our life. It should be a consistent practice in our life, at least. And so Jesus' point, too, is that, compassion is not necessarily just a program, but it is who we are and how we should be. It's a true value that we should live by. Going back to Matthew 25, verse 40, he says, I tell you the truth. When you did it, when you helped one of these, the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me. When I think of children, my thought automatically goes to my granddaughter, Nolly. She's our only granddaughter right now in our life, Laura and I. And so she is really the apple of our eyes right now. And many of you know this already, but if you don't, Nolly was born premature by like 3 months. And I remember when we got the word, and it was an emergency pregnancy delivery that was taking place. I remember Nolly having to go into the NICU down in Charlotte. And they had all this equipment. And Laura and I eventually went down and visited and saw her there. And it was wild to see the staff who was there, the amount of babies who were there, and all the technology that was availed to our granddaughter and those other children. And I remember getting into conversations with many of these nurses and how they said, yeah, because of this technology, there's a lot that we can do for babies who are born prematurely. And they hooked us up even with an app that we had on our phone that they sent pictures and videos of our granddaughter every day just to let us know and to set us at ease that she was developing well and doing great. And I just thought, while I was there at the NICU, and then every time, each day when I would get those videos or images, how truly blessed we were to have all of these resources available to all of us and to our family. And it really, as nerve-wracking as it was, it took a lot of that, anxiety away, being able to know that she was in the best hands. And I say that to say that your involvement in its child's life is a way to protect and to strengthen and to nourish them and to bring hope to them and their family. And they may not have these big giant NICU units and such, But what you're doing through sponsoring children is that you're giving them a chance, you're giving them an opportunity. They're eating every day, which is a big deal in that area of the world. And you're giving them education and allowing them to grow and develop. Here's another thing that I know about poverty. You know, when it comes to poverty, children are the ones that suffer the most. Children are the poorest of the poor, and children pay the highest price for our sins, for corruption that's filled in different government entities and other areas. It's children who suffer the most from all of this, and they are the innocent victims, truly, in this. Yet, here's also what I know about children: they have the greatest potential as well. Children are most open to change and to move forward and make a difference as they grow. As a matter of fact, 85% of the people who say yes to Jesus are between the ages of 4 and 14. And so children are more open to Jesus. And all the time that children are mentioned in the Bible, wherever they're mentioned, they're game changers. I mean, you think about Jesus feeding the 5,000. Who brought the loaves and fishes to Jesus? It was the children who did that, who were willing to share at that time. Jesus loved, and he still loves children. When disciples were trying to push children away from Jesus, he was saying, "Bring the children to me." Guys, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the sheer size of human suffering in our world today. We're constantly getting videos and pictures and images all the time. But here's what we need to remember, that people are born into this world one at a time. And practicing compassion in our life, being moved by compassion, is a one at a time thing. And you literally can do for one or two what you wish you could do for all the children of the world. You really can make a difference. And what I'd love for you to do is just watch this short video that's coming up as it tells a story of the difference that you can make.
Mwen salye nou depi Haïti. Mwen rele Solange. Mwen gen 12 ans. An fè 6e année fondamentale. Mwen nan Compassion Internationale projet Okay. Okay c'est 3e ville dans le pays d'Haïti. Li bel en pile. Li gen belle plage. Li gen bel site touristique. Nous fait bon manger. Nous te gen corona qui te blayi dans tout pays. Grâce à Dieu, mon Dieu te protégé Haïti, nous pas de victimes. Nous connaissons un pile moment difficile. Tant que 14 août 2021, nous te gen un gros tremblement de terre. Un pile moun te mouri, un pile kay te écrasé. N'a dit un gros merci à Compassion Internationale pendant moment difficile ça yo, ni dans corona, ni dans tremblement de terre qui était là pour nous. Mal l'école du lundi au vendredi, l'aime vini m'étudier. Les vendredis après-midi avec les samedis, mal l'activité dans projet a. Gen des jours dans l'informatique. Les nous parler, nous étions dans un caille là pour faire travail avec mamie. Après ça, moi joue avec sœur jumelle, moi avec grand scène. Tant que monter bécane, jouer au sleigh, faire la go, courir. Je demande tout le monde pour aider me prier pour Haïti, pour le projet H300, pour Compassion Internationale, pour Timounio, pour staff projet et pour famille. C'était Zamion Milandi. Bye bye.
So you might be asking, well, how can I help? Well, the great news is that you can begin right now simply by scanning the QR code that you see on the screen. And this will bring you to an opportunity to be able to sponsor a child here out of Haiti. If you can't access the QR code, there's a link here also to our church website. And if you just follow that and the simple directions there, it'll move you on your way to really make a difference in a child's life. Listen, God loves you, but he also loves all the children of the world. And so if he has moved in your heart today to be able to help out even just one child, I would say step into that. And if not, then I would just say continue to pray about this, think about it, and let God continue to move in your heart. And ask this question. This is a good question for us to ask ourselves. Have I been compassionate to someone today? Because that's the true pathway of following Jesus.